these federal judges who have already issued temporary restraining orders against the Trump administration for their unlawful executive orders, these judges are pissed. We're now on to like the next stage where you had the temporary restraining orders granted, and now we're talking about enforcement of the orders, where the plaintiffs who filed these cases are pointing out to the judge, hey, there may be existing violations that are taking place. And now that you've already ruled against the Trump administration, enforce your order by compelling additional things. For example, by compelling back pay, by compelling action be taken to restore the status quo after it was originally frozen in the temporary restraining order. So, for example, Judge Ali, Washington, D.C., granting the motion to enforce his restraining order against the USAID spending freeze, he ordered the Trump administration to pay all invoices and letter of credit drawdown requests for work done prior to the order, February 13th, essentially immediately. I mean, 36 hours, pay up everything that you owe by shutting off the spigot with these payments that were due. Then you have this other order, another federal judge extending her block of the Trump administration's blanket spending freeze. She says the administration has tried to say one thing while expressly doing the other, and called the freeze, that blanket government spending freeze, ill-conceived. And so she's saying, hey, I'm extending this. You got to pay up as well. And then, Harry, what I expect to happen too for these probationary employees who it seems pretty clear, and so does the Office of Special Counsel who oversees unlawful federal hiring and firing practices, is saying you owe them back pay now, and you got to put them back into their jobs. You can't just fire people and then lie on pretextual grounds that you're firing them because it's for cause or because of performance. That's a lie. You're like defaming these people. Pay up and put them back. So, Harry, this is big now, and this shows that what DOGE actually was doing is now going to lead to possibly massive damages as well. Aren't they the ultimate creator of waste and now federal spending because of their acts? That's the irony, but some serious stuff here, Harry.
Yeah, so some serious stuff. I'll get to DOGE in a minute, but you know, the way it works, right? Right away, you go to a court and say, freeze it so we can, then adjudicate it. And if the ones who say, yes, freeze it, and it already looks as if in a couple cases, the administration's monkeying around or changing or bobbing or weaving. And as you say, once the district court has lowered the boom, it doesn't want to be defied. And that is what's happening. Of course, we're in the sort of entering the mid game of a long 2-mile run, you could say. Do it right away, then adjudicate that. And at every step of the way, we'll see especially what will happen with the USAID. You could find the Trump administration trying to get emergency relief. That's how it's come to the Supreme Court already in one case, although it declined to do it in another. But we're going to be watching for the overall sweep of this. At the end of the day, they don't have to really cross their arms and give the middle finger to the courts as long as they have another remedy to proceed. And the question's going to be, when they get to the end of the road, then will they, pony up and do as they're supposed to, or will they in fact try to resist? But you got it. You don't want to be in front of a district court who has just told you that you must comply when the other side has brought before them, as they have in a couple cases, pretty good evidence that they're just not doing it. Whether and now back to DOGE. Part of this is they're a total mess. You saw the 20 people resign today who said, we're here to do real work. We've got these political actors trying to tell us what to do, asking who we voted for, by the way, seeming to be imbecilic on all the stuff that we're doing. We'd be violating our oaths if we go through. it looks as if at least 40% of the things DOGE has done add up to exactly zero in cost savings. It looks like they've been inflated again and again, including by Elon Musk. It looks as if they are disproportionately targeting perceived liberal enclaves within the federal government. The courts are going to get to the bottom of this with DOGE one way or another. It's just too crazy and unprecedented. But yes, we're now in sort of stage 2 or 3 of 5 or 6, and we will be the district courts. They enter orders based on what the law is, and then they don't like to be jerked around. Now what the courts of appeals will do to back them up, and ultimately the Supreme Court, that's where we have to really eventually keep our eye on. But so far, so good.
Let's talk about some of the other steps, Harry. I mean, are we talking about, this is enforcement, but then we have, the permanent injunction. I mean, these cases have a full life cycle.
Yeah.
Emergency relief. Are they following the emergency relief? Yes or no? Then you have a more fulsome restraining order type of hearing. And then the case proceeds kind of like a case, right?
It has a
merit trial, and merit trial means discovery. It means depositions. And so, earlier in the day, when it seemed out of nowhere, the Trump administration first they answered, they didn't know who was. They told the press they didn't know who was actually leading DOGE, because they have this whole scam where they pretend that Elon doesn't, so they can try to assert Presidential Records Act and other immunities and privileges. And then they just kind of picked like a random person, it seems, and so then the question is like, when were you appointed? Did you know that you were the leader? And I have to believe that this person probably, this is my prediction, found out today that they were the administrator of DOGE.
Exactly.
And I mean, Harry,
hey, buddy, we got the greatest job for you.
Harry, I handled wrongful termination lawsuits when I was practicing. And it was hard to find smoking guns because bosses weren't as stupid as this, and they would try to use coded language. They wouldn't put it in text. It would be implied, not express conduct. This stuff is some of the most outrageous conduct that I've ever seen in an employment context ever.
Yeah, and of course, they don't know anything about employment. And maybe the big thing with DOGE, we finally have a court. Remember, a couple courts, pretty well-regarded courts. Tanya Chutkin, Randy Moss said, well, we don't have enough yet to really enjoin them. But this new case in Maryland, Judge Stedman, I want to say, said, look, this comes down, they're suing. I'll get a teeny bit legal if you'll let me here. I think your listeners are pretty sophisticated at this point. They're suing under the Administrative Procedures Act, and there is an exception for disseminating information within the government, not an injury yet, if there's a need to know. And it has always been individual pieces of information. This is like the whole crown jewels, everything on everyone. And on that basis, and I predict this will be the kind of pivotal issue that'll go up and really decide the legality of DOGE. The judge said, this is not a need to know. Your general ideas or proclamations that you want to trim waste, that's not a need to know. Ben's specific Social Security information, that is just a step too far. And I'm going to, bring it down on that basis. And also, as you say, they're looking really bad because in public, Trump is like, a miracle worker. And Elon Musk is doing all these things. And then in front of courts who read newspapers, they're saying, oh, no, he's just like a kind of friendly advisor who has the president's ear. It's not even a real agency, so they're doing this kind of two-step that they're going to have to settle on the left foot or the right foot. And either way, there's going to be problems for them. So that's what's in the future for DOGE, which is, as you say, the big kind of amorphous, powerful, unprecedented, what the frig is going on with it? agency that the courts have to get their hands around. And that's probably going to require some discovery evidence, people on, taking depositions, because it is, complete right now, black hole.
That's why, both the lawyers who are arguing these cases, who have bar licenses, who have to appear before the courts and have duties of candor to the courts and have obligations that these judges are going to hold the lawyers to. They don't care that they're part of a Trump administration that's telling them to lie or not giving them data. You have a duty of candor, as well as the remaining people in DOGE. They don't have the same immunities that Donald Trump does. And if this Gleason person who they're claiming is the administrator, what they've just tapped her to do is to be a fall person and to show up and to now be the person who's going to be named now in all of these lawsuits because you named the person who's the administrator. So they've now made her get sued in probably 1,000 lawsuits that you're going to see. They've made her a defendant everywhere. And now she's going to spend her days sitting in depositions and being called to testify, which is why I predict when we hear from her soon, there'll be a lot of news about whether she remains or
you really got it. Remember this shades of Mar-a-Lago. Remember when they brought in the juniors and said, you sign right here. And she at least had the foresight to put from what I've been told. But generally speaking, the way they are really totally messing up the agencies is when the lawyers actually have to go into court. They don't know what to say. They're nervous. They say different stuff. And judges justifiably and predictably slap them around for that. I mean, that there's no real law precision compliance when the lawyers you send in, you've been in this position, Ben, you say, give me the damn facts. I've got to be in front of the court. I don't want to lose my license. Tell me what exactly is happening. And these poor schmucks are going in and really not even knowing. Man, it's ugly.
And Harry, these people went to law school. They passed the bar exam. They have families. They have future careers that I think they thought that they would be lawyers, maybe in private practice or climb in public practice. And when these judges are asking them very basic questions and they are beclowning themselves in the court, they are scarring their reputations forever. And essentially their hope has to be that court systems end totally, because assuming this continues to exist and federal courts exist, people will have a very short memory of who these morons are, and worse than morons, who these liars are, and people who are potentially, even in certain circumstances, sojourning perjury. Harry Litman runs the Talking Feds Substack, the Talking Feds YouTube channel, and the Talking Feds podcast. It's where I get all of my legal news from. I hope you will follow where I get my legal news from and check out all of Harry's platforms. It's called Talking Feds on YouTube, on Substack, and on the podcast. Thanks, Harry.
Hey, thank you, Ben. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.